Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some chicken quinoa bowls with kind of like a Mediterranean flair. We're going to prep up some chocolate chip cookies to bake up tonight because I always chill my cookie dough. Makes the best chocolate chip cookies. And then we're going to prep some granola bars for my kids' back to school snack. So let's start getting the quinoa cooking up. So we're going to boil 2 cups of water. So I'm going to add my water in here. And once that comes to a boil, then we will add in a cup of quinoa and a little bit of spices to kind of just season it up just a smidge in there. But we're going to let that raw burner, let that come to a boil. And for our granola bars, we need to toast up our oats. The toasted oats really gets rid of that raw oat flavor in your granola bar. So it is definitely like a must-have step when making homemade granola bars. Otherwise, it just tastes like raw oats. So we're going to take 2 cups of our oats and we're just going to spread them out on parchment paper, and we're going to pop these in the oven to toast at 350 for like 7 minutes. You don't need to cook them too long, but just enough to get out that raw taste to them. And our granola bars will be kind of cut with Rice Krispies as well, so they're a little bit lighter and not quite as dense. So we're going to pop these in the oven to toast up. And trust me, if you make homemade granola bars, you can't skip this step because otherwise it just tastes like a raw oat. Here we go. And then I'm going to set my timer for 7 minutes at 350. And then we'll take them out and let them cool to make our granola bars. Okay, well, before we start on our cookies here, let's kind of, I'm going to season or chop up and season up my chicken so it can kind of do a quick marinade real quick. And then we'll start kind of prepping our other things. I'm going to kind of fillet these in half, and then we're going to cut them into strips so that we can just build our bowl with them. Okay, this one has a good amount of fat, so I'm going to trim this off. Sometimes the butcher doesn't do as good of a job cleaning as they should.
You have a question. How often do you go to the grocery store?
Once or twice a week. I feel like I live at the grocery store sometimes. A couple years ago I tried this, going like once every 2 weeks, and then I would do like a huge Costco trip and Publix, and it kind of worked for a while. But now I realize with 5 kids and then my parents and stuff like that, for cooking for so many, you just can't get everything you need and make it through in a week. I do have 4 refrigerators, so we definitely always have overflow of produce when I go grocery shopping. But yeah, so it's once a week, religiously once a week, but sometimes more because my kids, I'm sure most kids are like this, last minute, oh, I need more of this. Oh, I ran out of this. Oh, I need a poster board for school or something. So there's always pit stops there. And I was always embarrassed. It's my 10-year-old daughter, but if she goes grocery shopping with me, we start with 1 cart, but we never leave the store with 1 cart. For some reason, I can pile it up really high, and it's kind of like you're holding the whole cart as you're getting into the line, so the stuff doesn't fall out. But it always fills up 2 whole carts when we're leaving because it just doesn't fit back in the same way. And somehow I feel carts are smaller than they used to be, or we just buy a lot of stuff. Okay, so we've got our chicken kind of cut up here into nice little strips. Just wash my hands. And then we're just going to season them. I'm going to use a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. And again, that's going to keep the chicken nice and juicy, probably about a tablespoon or so, pouring it over. And then I'm going to use some of my sun-dried tomato oil on this. It's just going to give it a nice flavor to it. And I think that will just make it extra delicious, and we'll kind of play with these flavors. Then we're going to use some seasoning mix. This is Kirkland's, but it's like the same as the Mrs. Dash's original blend. And we're going to put a good serving of this over, probably like, a teaspoon and a half. I'm going to coat it really well, and then we'll give it a good mix. And then some garlic salt. So nothing kind of too crazy with our seasoning spices today, because we're just going to have lots of different kind of components for our quinoa bowl. Give it one more shake. And then I'm going to grab a pair of tongs, and we'll just kind of toss it and let that sit for a little bit, and do kind of like a quick marinade. Here we go. So again, just tossing it so all of those flavors can meld together. But that sun-dried tomato oil is just going to give it a little bit of a more robust flavor. And if you're like me, I absolutely love sun-dried tomatoes. Okay, let's do our little shift. And I'm going to just chop up my onion here, and we're going to let it start to kind of caramelize up for our little veggie things, because onions always need a kind of a hot minute in the pan. I'm only going to use half of it because I don't want it to be too overpowering in the onions today. And we're making kind of a smaller serving just for 4 people. Since my older kids are all off at the school, I took Teddy to his meet and greet at his preschool today. He's very, very excited. So he starts next week. So I'm going to be down to just 1 kid in the house. Okay, I'm going to add in, let me add a little bit of this. I'm going to use, again, a little bit of my sun-dried tomato oil in here. And we will be using sun-dried tomatoes as well. So that's about a teaspoon or so. And then I'm going to cut it with a little bit of olive oil, which is sun-dried tomato it's packed in olive oil. So it's the same oil, but it has a little bit of flavor to it. Let's get these starting to cook. I'm going to put that at about a 6, and then we'll turn it down once it starts to get a little warm. Okay, our water is just about at a boil for our quinoa, because we're making our chicken quinoa bowls today. And then we're going to prep up some chocolate chip cookie dough for later tonight. And then we're going to make our granola bars. So let's get our cup of quinoa in here. And I'm just using tri-colored, but you could really use any one, or you can even buy the frozen quinoa in the like the freezer section. Here we go.
You have a question. Do you ever make anything gluten-free?
There are meals that I make that are definitely just gluten-free in nature. Yes. Now, baking, I don't do a lot of gluten-free baking because we aren't gluten-free, and that is a whole nother level of cooking. It's very different. But I definitely have a lot of meals that are gluten-free. Here we go. So I'm just going to kind of pop those up, and then we're going to give our quinoa a little stir.
Yo has a question for you.
What's for dinner tonight? I actually have a plan today. I've got scallops sitting out de-thawing. We are going to have scallops with homemade yum yum sauce and lo mein. So kind of an Asian flair. I'm going to grab my toasted oats out of the oven. There's nothing really exciting to see about that. Here we go. So I've got my oats here, nice and toasty. I'm going to sit them and let them cool there, so that I'm going to get them off the pan because when we add our rest of our ingredients in for our little granola bars, we don't want them to be hot, or they'll melt the chocolate chips. So let's get this right here. Now, the reason why I said do it on your parchment paper, this is going to allow you to easily pick up the oats without them spilling everywhere. I'm just going to kind of grab. There we go. And now I can just move this out of the way and we'll just let this naturally cool down. But that toasting of it is just going to bring out those natural, that nice flavor. It gets rid of the rawness.
Sharon said chicken.
Well, thank you, Sharon. We appreciate that. I'm going to give our quinoa a nice little stir here. You know, for the longest time, I called this quinoa. And this was like 15 years ago when it was first coming out. And I didn't realize it was quinoa. And so I just pronounced it phonetically how I saw it. Until somebody was like, "You mean quinoa?" And I was like, "That's what I mean." We're going to add a little bit of garlic salt. Just kind of season that up just a smidge for it, though it has a little bit of a flavor in it. Now that we have it as a nice boil, it's such a really simple thing to cook. We'll let it boil here for about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to turn it down to low and put the lid on, and it fluffs up really, really nicely. Okay. Let's make our honey syrup kind of for our granola bars, and then we'll pop on there. So our granola bars have a honey base to them that is, I already had my butter set out, with brown sugar. Now, if you don't like honey, you could always switch this out for either corn syrup or agave, but it makes them just have such a lovely flavor. So you're going to start with 1/4 cup of butter, which is a 1/2 stick. And then we're going to add in 1/2 cup of brown sugar and then 1/3 cup of honey. And we're going to heat it until that brown sugar has dissolved and it is no longer like grainy. So I'm going to turn my back burner on. I'm going to turn this down a little lower. And then 1/3 cup of honey. And I am just going to eyeball this because I find pouring honey into a measuring table can get kind of messy, or into a measuring cup. So we want 1/3 cup. So it's a good amount of honey. And this is what's going to hold your granola bars together. Now we're going to heat this until that butter and that sugar is melted and it comes just to a boil. As soon as it comes to a boil, we are going to turn it off and let it sit. You don't want to cook it too long because then you'll have a crunchy granola bar instead of a chewy one. Okay. Our quinoa has a great boil now, so let's give this a stir.
Yeah, question. What kind of granola bars are you making?
We are making mini M&M and chocolate chip granola bars. So they'll have that kind of honey flavor, but anything you want to mix in, you could. You could do pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, raisins, craisins. All of that works well for this. But my kids' favorite is the mini chocolate chips and the mini M&Ms. So I want them to eat them up nice. And I have to keep it nut-free because of the kids' school. Okay, we're going to make our chocolate chip cookies. These are just my favorite. And the trick for having just the best chocolate chip cookies is you've got to let the dough chill. I typically let it chill for a couple of hours, but you can even also have it chill overnight, but it makes them bake up so nice. We're going to cream our butter right now, and then we're going to add in sugar, brown sugar and sugar. So let me grab these two. Do a quick little mix. This is going to help them cream over. We're going to use 3/4 of a cup of granulated sugar and 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. But before I do that, I'm just going to give this a little bit of a stir. There we go. I have them sauteing. I want them to get nice and brown and caramelized because they'll just add a lot of flavor. So 3/4 of a cup and 3/4 a cup. So of each one. There we go. So I've got the granulated sugar, and then we're going to do brown sugar. And I need to restock my brown sugar. It's always funny when I like do a restock of all of my baked goods, and then it's like I always buy way more than I have, and it's like, oh, I gotta find extra containers to put them in. So we need 3/4, so it's gonna be just about half of this. That's a half measuring cup. So we got 3/4 and 3/4 of both sugars. And now we're gonna let them cream together. So while those are creaming, let's come over here and let's get our peppers chopping. So we're going to use sweet peppers in here because they're just going to add a lot of flavor. You can also use a bell pepper. I'm going to cut off the tops of these, and we'll start throwing these in with our onions. I'm going to do a little bit of a bigger chop on them because I want them to be kind of like a big part of it. Just going to look at this. There we go. I'm just doing a quick mix on it so that it kind of goes up. So we've got our sweet peppers here. I prefer sweet peppers over bell peppers because they're not quite as bitter, but a bell pepper works well. And then a little trick to making bell peppers or sweet peppers cut up easily. If you cut them from the inside versus the outside, that skin can get a little bit slippery and it doesn't quite cut as nice. But that inside, you have that little gripper. It's got a bit more texture. So it kind of cuts up really nicely that way. Let's get these tossing. I'm going to turn this up to about a 4 now. So just around a medium heat, but not too high. And we'll let them kind of cook up for a few seconds, and then we will add in, we'll cut up some zucchini to add in there. We're also going to have some fresh herbs and tomatoes. Let's get our next set of ingredients in here. We're going to add in 2 eggs. So we've got 1 and 2. And I use large eggs when I'm baking. I just use large eggs for everything. But it doesn't make so much of a difference unless your recipe kind of calls for it. Then we're going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla. So there is a lot of vanilla in this recipe, but it really makes these cookies just delicious. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of salt. And these are what's going to make their cookies, have their little pop on it. And we're going to let these cream together. Now, after you've creamed that butter and sugar, you're just going to want to go down with a spatula and scrape off the edges. That way, everything gets mixed well together. I always add my baking soda in with my more wet ingredients because it mixes up nicely and I don't have to worry about sifting it into my flour. It kind of takes out that step. But you just want to make sure you do scrape all of that off so that it can get incorporated.
Question, are you using unsalted butter?
I'm using salted butter. So I love salted butter and I use it in all of my baking. We've got our nice boil right here. I'm going to give this a good stir. And again, once you come to a boil, you're going to turn it down. You don't want to continue boiling it because if you boil it too long, you'll turn into candy. So got it, and it's perfect. We're going to add this to the side. We're not done with our vanilla yet. Do a quick whisk. We are going to add into our granola bar a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. So that honey, that brown sugar, and that vanilla just adds a great flavor. Put it a little farther away from that burner. And then a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Here we go. And this gives that sticky base just a wonderful flavor. We're going to give it a nice little mix. Perfect. And then we're just going to let this kind of honey cool for just a second. That way, when we go to mix it in, it will be a little bit cooler and it won't burn or like melt our chocolate chips and stuff like that. Okay. Oh, lost a pepper. Okay, let's chop up and we're going to add in our zucchini. We're going to let that saute in there with those peppers, and then we'll finish up making our dough for our cookies. But I will say the chilling is like an important step. Oh, we've got a thunderstorm coming. I didn't realize it was going to storm here. But it makes your cookie so chewy and soft. It doesn't, your cookies won't get crunchy. It keeps them just a nice texture. And it also brings out more of that caramely flavor from the brown sugar. And so I highly recommend chilling your cookie dough for like chocolate chip cookies, white chocolate macadamia nut. Just makes it better.
You have a question? Where can someone find these recipes?
So we always upload our videos to the link on our page, so you can always rewatch the videos, and then you can cook along with me. We do offer recipe cards for our members, so they are able to, they get a couple of recipe cards each week for it. But we have our videos available for everyone. So we've added in our zucchini in here. We're going to let it saute up. We will add our fresh herbs in a little bit, but I want my veggies to cook a little bit on that heat, kind of bring it up. But let's get to our cookies. We are going to add in 2 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. There we go. So we've got 1. Make sure there's no holes in there. 2, and then we need a 1/4 cup. Now, the trick with chocolate chip cookies is you have to get the flour ratio correct, because if you have too little, you're going to have flat cookies, and if you have too much, then you're going to have cake-like cookies. So got to have that ratio just right. We're going to cream the flour into our cookies, into our butter base here, and then we'll be able to add in our chocolate chips, and then the dough is going to chill until dinner tonight, and then I'll roll them out then. There we go. And perfect. So now we have our flour incorporated into it, so it's got a nice kind of delicious base to it. And then my favorite chocolate chips are the Ghirardelli, but any chocolate chip really works for this. You're going to add in about 2 cups of chocolate chips. This is a huge bag, so it's not quite, this is more than 2 cups, but a standard chocolate chip bag is about 2 cups. So I'm going to add in just visually what I think we're on here with 2 cups. That should be just about it. You don't want to skimp on it. Sometimes what's also really delicious is a mixture of mini chips and regular chocolate chips are so good. We're going to mix these in. And voila, our cookie dough is ready. Now, this is just delicious to eat on its own. This is one of my kids' favorite things to help out. They're always like, I'll be your tester. That's like their favorite job in the kitchen. But I'm just going to pop my lid on my bowl, which I will say is if you have a KitchenAid, you got to get these. I love them. It just allows you to prep up your dough, and then I just pop it in the lid on, and then it goes in the fridge. You don't even have to use a wrap or anything, but love it. So our cookie dough is made for tonight, which my kids will be very, very excited for because they love chocolate chip cookies, but I don't make them that often because they get eaten so fast, but I like to have little cookies in their lunches.
You have a question? Was that milk chocolate or semi-sweet?
Semi-sweet. I prefer semi-sweet in my cookies because I feel like milk chocolate is too sweet. But you could use any chocolate. You could use the dark chocolate, any chip that you want in it. So it's versatile. You can even do like the white chocolate chips if you do that, and you could throw in some macadamia nuts, and boom, you have our, white chocolate macadamia nut cookies. Okay, look, we've got this nice kind of thick syrup. Do you guys see how it kind of pours nicely? And it's cooling down. Let's get ready to start sauteing up our chicken here. And then we're going to make our granola bars. I'm adding in about a tablespoon and a half of our regular olive oil. And then, of course, I'm going to use some of this olive oil because it's so good. This is just going to be kind of that theme throughout. And we're going to let this heat up. I want this to get nice and hot before I add in the chicken so that I can sear it off. Let's get a fork. We're going to add in a good helping of our sun-dried tomatoes for this dish because they're so good.
You have a question. How much butter and brown sugar is in the granola honey mix?
So it is a 4th cup of butter, so a half a stick, and a half a cup of brown sugar with a 1/3 cup of honey. And then we added in a half a teaspoon of salt and a half a teaspoon of vanilla. Okay. We've got our sun-dried tomatoes in there, and we're going to let them kind of heat up and cook. They're going to let out some more of that oil and those flavors in here, but sun-dried tomatoes are very strong flavor. So that's what we're going to be picking up a lot of in this dish, but it's going to be delicious. Okay, let's get our fresh herbs kind of prepped so that we can throw them in there as well. I just have oregano and basil because they kind of really fit with the Mediterranean flair of this meal. You could also add parsley in here as well. I think that is also another one that works great. But that one's one you'd add towards the end because it kind of cooks off its flavor really quickly. We're going to do a quick mince on these, and then we'll add them in the pan with also a little bit of sun-dried or tomato paste, which is going to give you just a bit more of a tomato flavor too. But again, not super overpowering. Okay. So we've got our minced up herbs, and these are just going to add that just really fresh flavor, which I think is going to be so nice on our little quinoa bowl. Here we go. And then let me grab, since these tomatoes are sun-dried tomatoes are just a smidge big, I'm going to just snip them in half because they are pretty big. Now you could always dice them up, or you can get the diced ones at the store for it, but they'll add this flavor. And it's one thing that's nice is this is going to have a nice strong flavor, which will really help season up the quinoa and just makes it really lovely. There we go. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to turn this up a smidge higher now. We're going to let it kind of saute up, then we'll add in some spinach in just a second. Let's get our granola bars. You know what? Before we do it, we can put our first kind of batch of chicken in because I feel like it's nice and hot. I can feel the heat coming off of it. There we go. So we're going to do it in batches because we want our chicken to get a nice sear up on it versus just like putting it in there, throwing it all at once. That would cause the chicken to let out its juices, and then you're not going to get that great sear on it. So we're going to do this in 2 parts. That way it will cook up nicely. We'll do one more in there. And making sure each piece has a nice spot on there so it gets that good golden crust on it. Okay, let's go with our oats here. And let me get my measuring cup. So we have 2 cups of our toasted oats, and then we're going to add 2 cups of Rice Krispies. These have some blue and green Rice Krispies in there because they were part of that like Earth Day Rice Krispie box, and they just are lingering in here. There we go. So we've got our 2 cups of oats with our 2 cups of Rice Krispies, which helps make this a nice kind of lighter granola bar. It's not as dense and thick, which I think works really well for the kids as too. So we're going to give this a nice little stir. And then we're going to add in our syrup that we made. So this is our honey, brown sugar, and butter with vanilla and salt. There we go. And we're going to coat all of our ingredients with this. And then we're going to mix in our mini chocolate chips and our mini M&Ms. Now, sometimes the mini chocolate chips will start to melt, and that's totally fine. The mini M&Ms are great for this because it prevents them, that shell prevents them from melting. And they also make mini peanut butter M&Ms. So like over the summer, I made them with some mini peanut butter M&Ms. But since these are going to my kids' school, even there. So we've got those mixed up. We'll add our M&Ms in just a second.
Do you have a question? About how long does the quinoa need to cook for?
It's on low now. It's about 15 or so minutes. So we're about ready to pop it off and look. If you, lid is nice and hot. So it steams there. And the trick with quinoa is you have to fluff it. And you want to fluff it with a fork. Because and that's going to make it nice and fluffy, you see? But don't do it with a spoon. Do it with a fork. The nice thing about quinoa is you really can't overcook it. It just kind of steams out. And what would happen is you just more like would burn the bottom if you forgot about it for like an hour. But it's pretty forgiving.
And what would you say it tastes like?
It's kind of like, I want to say, like brown rice, but a really fluffy texture, like a mix between brown rice and couscous, if you've had couscous. It's fluffy like couscous, but it has a nutty flavor like brown rice. Okay, we've got our chicken flipped. We'll do a quick kind of saute on it, but you see we've got this nice kind of crispy edges on there. We'll let it kind of cook up, and then we'll take it out, and we'll do our next batch on there. Okay. I've got my mini chocolate chips and my mini M&Ms. You need about a half a cup of each, which is the rest of this bag. Minus my kids stole some. They had these out when Teddy was during his tonsillectomy. For some reason, he would eat them, and I was surprised because I guess he would just swallow them whole, but he was very into them. And then a half a cup of mini chocolate chips. And I like the mini because you're not getting a big chocolate in your face with the bites. It's more subtle. And then we're just going to mix it in and kind of make sure they're all coated here or like stirred in. But again, you could add in nuts, raisins, seeds, different, dried fruits, coconut, mini marshmallows. A lot of different things can go into the granola bar to make it unique.
Yeah, have you ever toasted quinoa before cooking it?
You definitely, I've done it once before, and it brings out this just nice kind of earthier flavor, nuttier flavor to it. So it does work well. Okay, I'm going to turn this guy down. We are getting these all nice and cooked up for it. This is going to be our little veggie medley with zucchini, peppers, onions, sun-dried tomatoes, and our fresh herbs. I'm going to grab a bowl here and grab our chicken out so we can put our next batch in to cook, and then we'll press our granola bars into our little container to make their shapes in a little 8x8 inch pan. There we go. And we cook the chicken in that, olive oil and a little bit of that sun-dried tomato olive oil. And so it's going to have a really nice flavor to it. So that's going to get kind of blend all of these flavors together. Let's get our last batch in. And again, spread them out so they each have their little spot on your pan. I'm cooking mine over about a 6.5, so a medium high. Getting that all in here. Okay, and we'll let these cook up nicely. Now let's grab my pan and a little spray. So I put them straight in my pan. It's a non-stick 8-inch pan, but I spray it with a little bit of olive oil or cooking spray, and that just allows it to slide right out of your little thing. So you don't need a whole lot in there, and you don't need to line it with parchment paper or anything like that. It will just slide right out. So we're going to add in our base to our granola bars. And then we'll have to push them down firm. And that's the key to getting your granola bars to stick together, is you have to firmly push them down. And then they'll hold together when they cool.
You have a request. When are you going to be cooking outside again?
This weekend, we are going to be cooking outside. And then we're hoping to just start up next week, kind of going over there one time a week during the week to do like a lunch stream there. And then letting the Jackie swim at the pool and whatnot after his nap. Let's keep these flipped. There we go. Okay. And a few of these flipped over. And then we'll let these kind of sear up. They have just that delicious kind of, we seasoned them with that olive oil, Worcestershire, a little bit of Mrs. Dass's kind of original seasoning, and garlic salt, so they'll have just a lot of flavor on them. There we go. Put that right there. Let me grab, either use wax paper or parchment paper to press it down. That kind of creates a non-stick surface so nothing sticks to it. So I'm going to put it over the top. And then again, firmly push this in, just like with Rice Krispies or Scotcheroos. You want to push all of those air bubbles out because it holds its form better. You don't want it to be fluffy. There we go. Perfect. Again, push it out, and then you just lift it up, and you just let it come to a cool, so like 30 minutes. When it's all completely room temperature, that syrup we made will firm up and it will hold our bars together, and you can just flip it out because we greased the pan on a cutting board. And then I cut mine up into squares, but you can do rectangles, any shape you wish. And then I wrap mine in wax paper or parchment paper to keep them from sticking to each other when you like send them off to school or whatnot. It works really well. Okay, the chicken here is almost done. Our veggies over here are just about done. We're going to just put a little bit of garlic salt on them. There we go. Season them up to have some of that nice sun-dried flavor tomatoes. Oops, lost a piece.
Oh, what kind of oats for the granola bar?
I just used old-fashioned oats. So you can use quick oats for this. They'll have a slightly different texture because a quick oat is like more of a cut oat. We forgot to add in a little bit of our spinach. Let's add that in real quick. And then don't use steel cut oats. Those will not make a very good granola bar. It would be like really crunchy. Okay, added in about 1.5 cups of spinach. And you want to add this in at the very end because it will wilt up quickly, and I want to keep its form a little bit so it's just slightly wilted for it, but just adds a nice little pop of vegetables to these as well. So we'll let that heat. I'm cooking mine over about a 2 right now, 2, 3. Okay, we've got our chicken is done here. So we will pop this off in the bowl so it doesn't cook more because we don't want to overcook it. You want it to be nice and tender. And then, here we go. Let's add that right over here. We are almost ready to serve up our lunch. There we go. So again, we're just waiting for our things, and you can see spinach wilts like so fast. You don't need a lot of time in it, but you don't want to cook it to where it's soggy. So I always like to throw it in that last like 2 minutes before cooking, because then it retains its, texture and it's not too like soggy. Okay, let's get ready to serve up our dinner or lunch here. It's not quite dinner time. Let me grab my thing. Okay, so for our quinoa bowls, we are going to start out with our fluffy tri-colored quinoa that we just seasoned up with a little bit of garlic salt. Doesn't need much flavor, but you're going to put that on the base there because we have our veggies here that are seasoned with fresh basil and oregano. We have sun-dried tomatoes, zucchini, spinach, onions, and sweet peppers in here. So we're going to really build that on because you're going to mix it all together. And then we have our chicken that we marinated in that sun-dried tomato oil with our Mrs. Dash's herb, garlic salt, and then that Worcestershire to keep it nice and juicy and tender. Then we also made up our granola bars, whipped them up for school this week. These will be perfect in the kids' lunches and their snack, and they're nut-free. And let's not forget, tonight we will be baking up our chocolate chip cookies. We're going to let them chill in the fridge until dinner time. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we cooked for, so chicken quinoa bowls, granola bars, and chocolate chips, and cookies, and you can watch along and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all the different cooking gadgets I use. I've got my hex-clad pans, my all-clad, my knives, all the different cutting boards, spatulas, all the crazy stuff you see in my kitchen I've got there for you guys. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.